The Brits finally said, this is enough of this, it's draining us, we're out of here. The UN got involved and they created modern-day Israel in 1948. So that moved around a lot of Palestinians, but that's what ended up happening. So they're celebrating this. We just happened to get there. We didn't know that, but on the 70th day, they're having a celebration there. So the flags and stuff that you will see right here, there are thousands of those all over the place. People are celebrating. They had fireworks till 2 in the morning. They had their jet fighters flying out over the Mediterranean Sea. I mean, it was quite a sight there. So, but in 1967, again, Israel is just this itty-bitty little country surrounded by so many other people. In 1967, they had the Six-Day War, and that was with Syria, Jordan, and Egypt. And like the verses that we read earlier today, Israel prevailed. They gained 30 miles of the Golan Heights. Then in 1973, there was a war with Syria and Egypt, and again, they ended up winning. In 81, Egypt signed a peace agreement. But so let's go ahead and move on. We just had gone out to eat once. Well, we went out to eat quite a few times. But this city is in the port of Jaffa. Does anybody remember about the port of Jaffa? Where did Jonah start from when he was running to Tarshish? It was the port of Jaffa. And in commemoration, that's actually a bronze whale. Yeah, from that scene, the port of Jaffa there. So this is Caesarea. It was built by Herod the Great in 22 BC. It was destroyed many times over by earthquakes and conquerors that had come in. Because if you had something back then in ancient times, somebody else that was mightier and stronger would come in and take it away. Let's see. Yeah, and Cornelius was in Caesarea. Well, let's see, I'm getting ahead of myself. In Caesarea, and then he was sent to Joppa to find Peter, and there was about a 40-mile difference. But let's see, let me read that. In 58 AD, the Apostle Paul also was accused of having caused a riot and was sent to Caesarea to be tried by the governor. Being a Roman citizen, Paul demanded to be heard in the emperor's court. He sailed to Rome from Caesarea's harbor. There he was tried, and a few years later was executed. So Caesarea has come up quite a few times and different things there. Here's some of the pillars to give you an idea of what size it was. Now, they have a lot of earthquakes over there. So these things tend to topple. This was amazing. This is an aqueduct. Water is the most precious thing they have over there. The Sea of Galilee is the biggest water source of fresh water they have. But they actually brought water in 10 miles. So imagine the slight grade, the engineering they had to have to bring that in from 10 miles away. And of course, the earthquake could kind of mess these things up. But, all right. You've heard of the Valley of Armageddon, haven't you? I mean, everybody's heard that, I'm sure. Well, just above the Valley of Armageddon, basically it was right in the middle of a trade route. And the trade route was Egypt and Syria. And so you've got this trade route going through here, and they have what they called a tell, a hill. And that overlooked it. And that was called the Tel Megiddo, the city of Megiddo. And this is some of that. But what was really interesting, remember a moment ago I alluded to the fact that if you had something and somebody was stronger and they could take it away from you, they would? Every time that a victor came in and overtook things, their architectural styles were a little bit different. So what would they do? They would knock down what was there. They would go ahead and use the building materials and make it their way, have it your way type thing. Well, this tell was built on 25 layers. So 25 different civilizations had come through there and taken over. Here it is again, too. These wall heights, they tended to build, this is up on top of this tell, and that's overlooking, let's get back there. That thing's quicker than I think. But over in here is the Valley of Armageddon. But these are the walls that they'd have. They'd build up a wall, and typically the people were shorter. It'd be maybe 6 feet tall. And so then they would add on. If you had another family that joined, or some kids, they would expand it and just add on another wall or two, and they had thatched roofs and things over these things, and so that's kind of what Megiddo was here. This is a storage bin for wheat and grain and things. You can see the steps coming down here. That's to get into said storage bin. This is my sweetie. There was horses, sort of. So, well, the rest is history. So, water source was so important back then. So to protect it, what they would do is if this is your city and you had a water source, you know, if somebody could hold you off from getting water, you can't make it very many days. So outside the city, they'd find this well or this water source, and then they would hide it. They'd cover it up so people couldn't see it. And then, you know, maybe trees, they'd grow something over it, whatever it was. Well, this were going down, this water source, they had it hidden outside this tell, and it was 60 feet down. So, and through the bedrock, and then it went 250 feet into this tell so that the city could keep water when they were under siege. So we're going down. Again, remember I said they were very energy conserving. You had to have these little items up here are solar heaters, and those were on every house, every apartment building, everything. Now they're starting to kind of hide them, but it was a law you had to have that. And again, they've got sun so much of the time. Okay, so let's see where we're heading here. This is remember Mount Carmel, where Elijah, you know, he had a standoff, and you know, the prophets of Baal and all those were ended up being killed. But this is Mount Carmel. This is what, I mean, they build things on. We're on Mount Carmel here, up in here. It's actually a beautiful terrace thing you can't see. This is looking out over the port of Haifa. But remember, rain. You know, the rain may be coming. They talked about a cloud coming. You can see a cloud out there. And that, because it hadn't been rain for many years, well, that would have been where he'd been looking over for the water to a little cloud out here coming in. Before, I believe, it was Elijah that ran ahead of the chariots and things too there. So a little bit of history there. So, all right, we're just kind of overlooking things here. Sweets. They had lots of this stuff. Kevin, this could be helpful for business. But they used less sugar, but we started to get used to it. But they still had a lot of good sweets. There's a lot of pictures of food, folks. I mean, it's good stuff there. All right. Let's see. All right. This is some architecture, just to kind of show what it was like back then. This is actually, we're heading into Canaan, and see if this is where. Yeah. Yes. If you notice, that shows how big the scale. It's huge. The scale, and this is a door outside of that church, and there's things here like, okay, they're fleeing baby Jesus into Egypt. Here, Jesus is preaching to people, and there's a boat where he'd cross the river, the Sea of Galilee. But there's many different things rather than belabor them. But that's what they would do, is they would depict these on their doors in the buildings there. This, let's see if I can get to where I want. But we talked about Jesus being born in a manger. This was not the manger, but they would have these type of manger things underneath their structure. So this is somewhat similar to where Jesus, when there was no room at the inn, where he would have been born in something akin to this. Now, we are in Cana. Where the first miracle was performed, turning the water into wine. And, ironically, there's a wedding here. So, wedding church, there we go. Validated. Cana. If there's something important, they tend to build churches on it. They just do. Okay. So, in just a little bit of history in Cana, it's 75% Muslim, 25% Catholic. There are no Jews in Cana. This is the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee was different than I thought. I'm thinking American scale. and the Sea of Galilee is 6 miles long. You know, I'm thinking the Mediterranean Sea, something like this. It's 6 miles long. That is a picture on it. It was a bit foggy that day. This is a boat that they found. It was over 2,000 years old, and it was so fragile, they found it right outside there. And to move it, they covered it with foam because it would fall apart, and they brought it in. There is the boat. That was 2,000 years old, they believe, similar to the one that Jesus may have been in when he was crossing over there. Let's go back just a little bit more on the Sea of Galilee. It's the largest body of fresh water there. The only other countries that really had much fresh water was Syria and Turkey. Otherwise, water is so very, very important. But it was 140 feet deep. So, okay, this, I don't know if you can see, but these are the loaves, and these are fish. So they're commemorating at Tabgha the fish and loaves miracle. Here is a church, and it was very close to where the Mount of the Beatitudes would be, because we're in it looking out. So the fish and loaves, that miracle was there. This is looking out. This is where they figured that Jesus was preaching at the Sermon on the Mount. This is where it's a bowl shape, and they said it had very, very good acoustics. So that's where the Sermon on the Mount took place. Now we're heading into Capernaum. And again, these are just a whole bunch of houses. You can see how small they are. I mean, they're nothing like what we have. And if you had a family and they got married, and you add on and add on. But remember, a long time ago, when they wanted to take this person that was paralyzed to Jesus to have him healed, this cripple. But they couldn't get in there, so they went up on the roof. Well, what makes it easy is a lot of the things they had were thatched roofs back then. So this little thing, along in here, they just have a little thatched roof on it. So that's kind of how it is. A lot of the stuff in the Bible, it's come to life to me in a different way than it ever did before, having seen and been there. Okay, this is also the Sea of Galilee. Up in here, this is going to get a little closer. We'll address that one. Let's see. And that's the Mount of Transfiguration. So that's where that one had occurred at. Strife. This is a machine gun pillar thing, that they've got a bunker. The hills, you can kind of see the terrain as we're driving along it, switching back and forth and along things. Would have been fun in a sports car. So we're going towards the Golan Heights, Tiberias and the Sea of Galilee. It says, in those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John the Jordan. And when he came up out of the water, immediately he saw the heavens opened up and the Spirit descending upon him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven saying, "Thou art my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased." Well, this is the Jordan River. This is where they figured that happened. It's probably about 50 feet wide. Well, I'm thinking Jordan, I'm thinking Mississippi. This is a wider part. Okay. This is yours truly walking down into the Jordan River. And they, again, commercializing things too. You could get baptized or rebaptized there again. Some of the folks in our group did. There was probably 43, 45 people in our tour group there. This little goober there is on the outside of all the doors in the hotels that go into your room. And as near as I could figure out, you kind of touch it, and I don't know if you pray or speak to it or something, but it's to remind you or whatever and get goodwill. Yeah. You have, go ahead, Adam, do you know? What was, there's little prayers that go with it or something?
It's a blessing, and it's written in Hebrew.
Okay.
And you tuck it up in a scroll on the inside. It's just there. It's almost like a good luck charm.
Okay. A rabbit's foot that's stationary there. So.
Essentially, but that was on every hotel, everywhere.
Yeah. And they have some fancy ones, they have other, but the other thing I learned is Shabbat elevators. The Sabbath Shabbat elevators. And what happens is that I thought I could outwit Sally and Adam, crash and burn. But the elevators are set, and I knew that, but forgot or didn't think it's Sabbath yet or whatever. Because they will take their Sabbath is Friday and Saturday, and then they go to work on Sunday. But on these elevators, it could be too much work to push the button. So maybe you push it once, and then it goes to the next floor, stops, and lets somebody out, whether there's somebody on there or not. And then it goes to the next floor, and the next floor, and the next floor, and the next floor. And I thought that I could... Okay, will you get on it? Okay, so you don't push it once. Okay, somehow you get on it, and I pushed it. I pushed it. And I got on, and I thought, I'm going to beat them. They're still waiting for an elevator. So I go to the next floor, and I got to wait. The next floor, I got to wait. The next floor, I got to wait. When I finally get to my destination, maybe I even got off and went up the stairs. But they beat me. So, okay. This is the Jordan River again. It's probably closer to 8 feet wide. Let's see here a minute. Well, going back to that Jordan River, the other thing is this is crossing over from Jordan into Israel. To prevent problems with the enemy, they had 13 bridges that the Israelis blew up, so the Syrians couldn't sneak over there. So, let's see what we've got. Iraq. Okay, this, I got to figure out where we are at here. Sea Valley, Knoxville, Iraq. Oh, what they would do is when they were building homes too, because land was so very precious, they would not build it on land they could till. They would build it on rock because they didn't want to waste it. But here we've got some of the, this is, I'm trying to remember the name of the town here. But this in here, they had built this up, and earthquakes and just the different rock, the ground underneath these plates would move, and as they would, depending on what they're moving, that would determine what direction that these pillars would fall down on. But here's Sally in there at that. Again, more of them. Up in here, there was a infamous player movie, but up in there, Jesus Christ Superstar, and that's where Judas just terminated himself. Here's an amphitheater in there, so you can kind of see the structures and how they had made things. Now, we are crossing over. Oh, excuse me. The place that we were just at, those pictures, I'm trying to move along. I don't want to bore people, but it was in Bet Shean. That's where all the architecture was that we saw just a moment ago. And that is where, when Saul was killed, and they took he and his son's bodies and had them on there, and then some of his men took them down. But that's what that city was just a moment ago. So now we're crossing over, and we're heading towards Jericho. See all the fences? There's just a tremendous amount of security and fences everywhere, and there'll be 2 rows. So if you got through one, there'll be another one. Some of this hillside. In Israel, their agriculture was pretty good. They could grow everything they wanted. The only thing that they imported for food was wheat. This says, this road leads to Area A. They had A, B, and C there. This is up in the Golan Heights. So the road leads to Area A. Under the Palestinian Authority, the entrance for Israeli citizens is forbidden, dangerous to your lives, amen on that one, and against the Israeli law. So we could go into 2 of the 3 zones, but we could not go into all of them. Okay, this is a little town there. This is actually, I think, going to Jericho. Let's get back here a minute. Jericho surprised me. I'm thinking Jericho is massive because Israel had over 600,000 soldiers that they could go and fight it. But Jericho itself is only 9 acres. 9 acres. Our yard was 3.5 acres before. It's 9 acres. So, and they figured an average of about 200 people per acre could live inside the walled city. So there's probably closer to 1,800, maybe 2,000 a stretch in Jericho. What a difference from the way I believed. I mean, I thought it'd be a huge and massive city. We did not get to see this 9-acre hill, but this is Zacchaeus, a sycamore, a little tree like what Zacchaeus would be. This is this will be like a temple or a mosque up in here, built on the side of the hill. This is overlooking the Dead Sea. Dead Sea is about 31 miles long. Scrolls. You've heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls, I presume? everybody? Well, in summer 47, the Bedouin shepherds were pasturing their flocks near the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea while looking for a goat that had wandered off into the cliffs. Came across a curious rock crevasse. When they threw a stone into the cave opening, they found that they were surprised to hear a strange ting or echo. They crawled inside and ended up spying large whole jars. This stone had hit a jar and it made a different sound. Inside those jars was the Dead Sea Scrolls. So that's how they found them, looking for a goat. So this is a little bit early, but it was a bath, a ritual bath they had up in Masada. This is going down into the bath. You can see the stairs going down there. This is it's a soft sand type stone where, you know, a goat could have fallen in and stuff too. This would just wear out or wash out, and this is, I don't know if it was the actual or very similar to the one where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls at. Some of the terrain there that's rough. Again, this is overlooking the Dead Sea. You can see the fences there. This is some warning signs, and you'll see these sinkholes here? If you go along the Dead Sea, you could be driving or walking, and all of a sudden these sinkholes could just occur, and you've got a problem. I mean, you may be 10, 20 feet down, so your car, whatever. So they do not encourage you going riding on the beach like that. Yes, Adam?
Those sinkholes, too, are, the one in the center is at least twice as large as this sanctuary.
Yeah, they're seriously big. Okay, we're heading along again. This is still by the Dead Sea. This is very sad. We had a flash flood. The ground is so dry, they get very little rain. In the north, they get a bunch of rain. In the south, it is very, very arid. But here we were heading south. They got some rain, about a 15-minute flash flood. We thought we might not be able to make it into the Dead Sea to the hotel, but 12 young people were killed from this flash flood because the ground is so dry that water just has nowhere to run. This is overlooking the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is almost 10 times as salty as our oceans. I don't float very well, but I sure did there. I mean, it's about 1,000 feet deep, and the irony of it is it's about 1,400 feet below sea level. So, yeah, the saltiness is 34.2% salinity, but all right. Let's go here. This is just kind of give you an idea for your geography there. This would be Israel. Lebanon's up here. Syria's over here. We're within 3 miles of Syria. Jordan's there. Sinai Peninsula in Egypt. And Saudi Arabia is over down in here. Now, that's just kind of another one of that. But this shows the position. This is the Sea of Galilee, and that's the Dead Sea. This is a sunrise over the Dead Sea. It was really quite attractive there. Now we're going into Masada. A little history on Masada. King Herod was afraid that the Jews may go against him and it might not go well, so he wanted a place where he'd be safe. So he built this fortress way, 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 way up on top. And, oh, by the way, Herod was half Jew. He built this thing, but he never ended up going up there. So the Romans that built it, you see how steep that is going up there? When they finally ended up getting attacked, but they built ramparts and just built piled dirt all the way up there so they could get up and over the top. It took 9 months in a siege, but we'll get to that. We took this cable to go up there to Masada. And here's my buddy up on top there. And this is the view. I mean, this thing is really, really high, but Herod never went there. The Romans decided, we've spent enough money, enough time keeping this, he's not coming there, so it went into disrepair. Well, what ended up happening is they had some zealots, and again, buddy, they had some zealots, and these people went up there, and they're living up there because the Romans had abandoned it. It's this beautiful place up there, the view, they're safe and everything else, but there was a downside. They used a carrier pigeon to communicate with people back in the main city. The Romans intercepted the carrier pigeon. They found out that people were up there. This is a view again over the Dead Sea from up there. They found out people were up there. The Romans went up there.
Over in the left middle.
Yep.
You can see where the Romans split up into 4 sets, and that was part of their encampment.
Okay.
That little like rectangular object that kind of goes through is part of their encampment.
Okay. Oh, down in here is an encampment that they had. The Romans, they were there for 9 months. But what ended up happening is when they finally got up there, the zealots committed suicide. They killed themselves. It's because they wouldn't be taken. And in Rome, okay, it's done. They turned around and left. But there was 2 people left there, an older lady and a young gal. This is just a little antelope type thing we saw along the way of the Dead Sea. More fences. These are shofars. And this is Adams.
Can anyone play a trumpet here, or
Yeah.
so like a tuba, or anything with a mouthpiece?
But-
Because you're welcome to try. Peer
Going
pressure?
once, twice, or otherwise, you want to try? Sure. Yeah, that end. Yep.
I don't know.
All right. Somehow they get more volume out of these things because they would use them for ceremonies and calling people to a meeting and things there. But they had different sizes. But
Dan,
yeah, Adam, I'm in
real
the
quick.
time. I'm kind of moving along here. So, but okay, this is the Holocaust. It shows a little girl playing. They're kind of commemorating that, but that's barbed wire rather than a hula hoop or anything like that. It's very sad. Tremendous amount of fruit and vegetables there that you could get. This is in the city of Jerusalem, going down into some of the markets and things. They also had a Starbucks there. They call it a little bit different than our Starbucks, but yeah, I know. Probably patent or copyright or whatever it is. So, maybe just didn't play out or translate the same. But into Bethlehem, that they're praying for peace. Again, there's a completely different idea of how peace should look for the Palestinians or the Jews. This is overlooking Jerusalem there. This, if I can find what I want. Okay. This is a replica of Solomon's temple. But now, the Romans were not permitted to go into that temple. So their solution, see these 4 high-walled fortress thing here? They had that so they could overlook from here down into here to see what the Jews were up to. So that was what that was about there. This is kind of like the wall would look on the outside. And you can see it's built right on the edge, and then it's kind of down. So, and the thing with the wall, if 3 times a year they'd have a big ceremony of some sort. So they had different ones. And what would end up happening is many people would come into Jerusalem to worship. Well, when they did, the Romans were afraid there's too many Jews here. There could be a revolt. This is bad. So unless you were actually a Jewish citizen, you could not sleep inside Jerusalem at night. You had to go outside of the walls. Just some people on the streets. Now coming to the Mount of Olives and the Church of the Ascension there. Let's see.
Dan, if I could, that was why Christ was in the Garden of Gethsemane, because he was no longer allowed to stay in the walls of Jerusalem at the time. He was ushered out.
That is correct there. So, and Jews found him. But back in here, that is the mount, let's see, or the dome, or the, I want to find the exact, the Dome of the Rock, excuse me. And that is actually right built on top of Mount Moriah. Mount Moriah is where Abraham was about to sacrifice his son. It's where Solomon's temple was, and where they believe that Muhammad ascended up into heaven. This is a olive grove. In the Mount of Olives, they really named it after things, but they figured there was 8 olive trees there. So the Mount of Olives is a very small, very area. They had a whole list of things you couldn't do. You had to have long pants. You couldn't show open arms. Of course, smoking, guns, no eating, dogs. I mean, they frequently would have things posted and it would change. This is, again, walls of Jerusalem outside. You could see that. Now, I want you to look close. This will get better. See these? It looks like it's got acne or pock marks there. Look here. You see how bad that is? That's bullet holes. That's bullet holes, folks. We are very blessed to live in our country that we live in. In Mount Zion. That was at Mount Zion, and this is the police there. Let's see. This is another church, and this is, they would fight for land that they had in these holy sites. And what happened is the Muslims ended up taking over, because who owned it changed many, many times in that area. They would take over the land. They actually ended up selling it back to different faiths. And they built a church, and it was where King David was buried. And they actually had it right attached kind of beside it. They took this church, the same church, and they broke it up into 4 different parts because 4 different countries wanted it. The Christian, the Muslims, the Jews, and the Armenian. So you'd walk into this church and one part is Christian, one part it's Armenian, one part it's this and that. It was all because this land, they charged a great price and sold it to people. But again, some of the beautiful architecture. This is the church where David was buried. King David's tomb. They had one side just for women. Again, they'd break up the women and the men a lot. It's not the same over there. Here's some people praying. Again, trying to move along. This is the side that's supposedly King David's tomb. I don't know about that. But on that side is for the women. On the other side of this partition was for the men. This, remember, they took the 30 pieces of silver that Judas had decided he didn't need or didn't want anymore. Obviously didn't need it. And then they went and bought the potter's field. Remember that, folks? This is on top of the potter's field. Again, a special place. They built something there. This is kind of like the old walls looked like. Again, I'm sorry, I'm trying here. This is a cave that might be very similar to a tomb where our Heavenly Father may have been laid. Here you can see they're depicted bringing Jesus. He's tied and they're beating and pulling and things there. This, and I was a little disappointed. This is Golgotha. And it was a big stone that was defective. And it could be, there was 2 Golgothas. That's the problem. It was just outside that fortress. But was it 20 feet or 60 feet tall? It depends on which one you believe. So they showed the path where Jesus walked, the Via della Rosa, and it would have been more interesting, except for me, they said, well, this is where traditionally Golgotha is, but we really think it's over here. So I kind of, took that with a grain of salt, but it would be something like that. They actually had one of the stones under the walls of Jerusalem that was 500 tons. How they moved this stuff, I have no idea. It's huge. They named gates. They had the Jaffa gate there. This is a olive press. And again, I'm trying to hurry. Then Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Well, let's go on here. Well, anyhow, Joseph of Arimathea donated or gave his tomb for Jesus. And this is what that tomb would have looked like. They actually couldn't get a 3rd level in, but they had 3 different levels. One for preparation, one for the body to lay in, and try to remember the other. I'm trying to hurry. Outside Jerusalem, they just built on cities. I mean, they built it on hills. That's what they had. They didn't want to give up agricultural land, so they built on hills. Again, a fortress, Jerusalem. Now, this is fascinating. Remember I said Jericho was 9 acres? This is the way this wall was about 40 feet tall. They had the slope up here, and then remember some were built on the inside walls? This would be about another 26 feet tall. So from here, across, it could be about 70 feet. Imagine soldiers coming down here looking up at that. It looks pretty intimidating. There's only 2,000 people in there. So, all right. This, they believed, this is in Jerusalem, there's a cemetery with 150,000 people there. And it was at the Mount of Olives where Jesus, or right in that area where Jesus had ascended from. And so the people, it was a primo spot to be there because they thought when Jesus would come that somehow they'd get to heaven quicker or whatever. This is church, or some of the building outside of the Wailing Wall as we're going closer to that. Beautiful, beautiful garden area. This is the pool of Bethesda in there. And you know how they said they'd talk about an angel kind of swirling its finger, and then, first person in there would get a miracle. Well, what ended up happening, the way they described it was kind of like, I'm not that scientific, but, like Old Faithful. Pressure builds up, goes up like that. There was some sort of pressure thing underground, natural, but not near as regular as Old Faithful, and that would build up, and that would start and swirl the pools and things too. But that was man-made in there. Bethesda, as we're heading to. Another gate, the Lion's Gate. They had lots of gates going into this huge city. This just talks about Pilate and Jesus coming together. That was the way of the cross. This is walking around in Jerusalem. Food again, folks. It's a beautiful thing. Again, things you're not supposed to do. You've got to be quiet. No shorts, no sleeveless, no guns, things like that. Again, here we go. This is getting much closer to the Wailing Wall. We're in Jerusalem. This I love. And that's kind of the verses too. It just struck me funny. Forgive me, America. Don't worry. Israel's got your back. Sorry. This gentleman was singing. This is our guide, Mickey. But this gentleman was just a singing minstrel. So we went along. There's a menorah behind. What's that?
He was a Hasidic Jew. There, like Christianity, there's different denominations, I suppose, of Judaism, and the ones that have the curls along the sides and always wear the skull caps. I know that's not the proper term, but
they were the
strictest,
yeah.
Hasidic,
This is at the Wailing Wall. It's a fountain there. The Wailing Wall is special because it's the last of the walls that surrounded Jerusalem, the original wall. So people would go and pray there, but they separated them, men and women. The men would be over on this side, the women over on that side. And here's the women, and they would pray and put their little prayers in the wall, stuff it in the wall and things too. And again, people praying. This is still the Wailing Wall. This is the men's side over here. Women would be over there. And some grandpa probably and some young kids had gone there. Another person talking. Then they had the dung gate. And again, the gates, what happened with the dung gate, because they may have little troughs or something in water, this thing's built on the hill. When it rained, all this stuff kind of headed downhill to the dung gate. So if you were poor, you would probably, the poorer stretch or part of the houses would be down the lower part, which is where the dung gate, where all this stuff would kind of come down under a flash rain there.
They had horses back then, not automobiles.
Yeah. Here we had some of the police, well, not police, excuse me, military. And what happened at age 18, it was mandatory that you go and join the Army. 2 years for women, 3 years for men. Now, if you were a very Orthodox Jew, you could get out of it, or if you were Muslim. But majority of the people do serve in the military. Here's a marketplace down there. This is spices in a marketplace. Remember how I talked about mustard seeds? Faith is as tiny as a mustard seed. Look at the tininess of mustard seeds. And then they talked about gifts of frankincense and myrrh. Frankincense and myrrh, of course, gold, one for baby Jesus. This is the Holocaust. We're in a museum there, and I'm trying to speed this up, but it basically in here it says 1.5 million children were killed in the Holocaust, Jewish children. The total amount that they figured was 6 million people, but a quarter of them would have been little children. This is just talking, this was a Jewish person that was married to a German person, and they had to wear signs saying you can't, this is bad. Here they're going on through and saying don't do business. They're forced to. The Germans were forcing the people, don't do business with the Jews. You can't. They're pigs. They're unclean. They're this and that. Here's some people marching. unfortunately, to their fate. That's Adam up in there. But this is a commemorative thing to the Jews that had fought and the others that had gone and helped fight for their freedom. That's that. This is a rail car that they would pack tremendous amounts of people in there and take them to be gassed.
It was actually an original from the Netherlands. That was a boxcar that went to Auschwitz.
Yep. One of their modes of transportation. Now we're coming into Jordan. Let's see if I can get, we're closing in on things here. Okay, as we're crossing over Jordan, again the security is high. That's where we're crossing over, and when we went in there, I had problems. I didn't know, I had little problems getting in, I had more problems getting out. They did a retina scan. And our family history, at least my eyes are not that wide. And I tried and tried and tried. And he says, well, just open your eyes. I'm trying and I'm holding on. And finally, after enough tries, I don't know, 10, 15 tries, I finally passed. So they let me go. Either that or they gave up. I don't know which. But then coming back, I couldn't pass it. The rest of our group went on beyond me, except, we had the one other gentleman and myself, Frank. He is having the same trouble too. And I had 3 different people trying to take a retina scan. And I never did pass it. They finally did give up. Again, the power of prayer. Because I wanted to go back to Israel. But, and the Jordanian people, their life expectancy, there's a tremendous amount of smoking there. About 50% of the people smoke. Their average life expectancy is 10 to 12 years less than ours. Tremendous amount of diabetes. The one thing they don't have, though, for the men is prostate cancer. There's a lot of zinc in their diet, and they don't have much prostate cancer. So here we're coming into Jordan, and Jordan is not as wealthy or as clean. Again, I'm trying to hurry. City on the hill. Now we're coming into Jerish. Jerish was built in 64 BC. It was one of 10 cities that made up the necropolis. You can see the architecture in there. It was quite impressive. Yep. You were there. This is a hippodrome. It could handle about 3,000 people. It was probably about 300 yards long and about 100 yards wide. And they have chariot races. This is kind of a divider. They would race down here and race around back. And there would be 3,000 people watching. I might have needed, let's see, I just want to, yeah, I'm okay. Well, out over that hippodrome, up in here, remember where the demons were driven out of, or there was 2 demonics, and Jesus drove out the different evil spirits, the demons, and they went into the pigs, the 4,000 pigs, and they went over the side of into the water. That was up in here. Again, trying to hurry, I don't want to run too long, but in Jerish, the architecture was beautiful. They had their own sewer system. That's what this was. This, if you can see it, is actually wagon wheel tracks in this stone. Again, still in Jerish. An amphitheater, that's Adam and I up there. Now we're going into a city called Petra. This was one of the modes of transportation. Petra was built about 100 years before Christ by the Nabatean people. It's one of the, according to UNESCO, one of the wonders of the world. And it was a trade route where they were mainly trading spices. Here we're coming down into it. Sally had always wanted to go there for years, but they've just burrowed into the stone. And the soft stone, they've carved out just tremendous things, as you'll see. Here were the couple soldiers. We'll work for money, they said. Well, my bride and my honey and my son there. This is going through Petra. Beautiful views there. A little bit of history on the Petra, though. It was built 100 before Christ. The Romans took it over 200 years later. In 363, they had a very bad earthquake. Then another one in 551 AD, and everybody left it. It's gone. So it was vacated. I mean, this is out of like a sandstone. I mean, it's just amazing the way they had cut into the thing. again there, this is a soldier. The architecture, I mean, that they did this with the sandstone is just amazing. Adam climbed up, not this, I don't have the proper picture, but there's 997 steps, I believe it was, to the top. And he had climbed up to the top of that. I ended up going,
I
Sally.
do believe I did climb higher.
Okay, you may have. But I think they said 997 steps. But so, again, just the architecture, the caves and things too. But they had those 2 earthquakes. The Romans abandoned it, and then the Bedouins, hundreds and hundreds of years, found it. And they were living in there. Here's some more of the steps carved into the stone. And it doesn't do it justice, the camel train. But what ended up happening, it was found in 1812 by a Swiss explorer. The Swiss explorer pretended that he was Arab. And he managed to get in and found it. And that's how they found this. Otherwise, the Bedouins had this thing for, hundreds of years to themselves. Again, some wildlife there. And this is also there. This is an amphitheater that they carved out of soft stone. That kind of shows the size of their kingdom there. And again, where Saudi Arabia is in reference to Israel. Camel train. We're overlooking Petra there. This, we went into the desert. And it was 91 degrees when we were there. We went there early so that I don't do good in the heat. I think the highest recorded temperature is 136. But this is the desert. Anybody heard of Lawrence of Arabia? This is Lawrence's ground. This is where this occurred when he was fighting. We're kind of overlooking things there. This is a Bedouin's tent. You could get tea and go in there and just get out of the sun a little bit. Some water. Again, more of this desert. The desert's called Wadi Rum. And Wadi just meant dry, and Rum was the name of the tribe. So it's called the Wadi Rum. There was a film by Matt Damon recently called The Martian. This is where it was filmed. Some of the beautiful things that they made and that they were very proud of. Again, some of the inlay, it's just gorgeous. Unusual, a gym for women. Because they usually women just didn't get treated the same over there. This is Mount Nemo. It's a sign. Again, there's another church up there. Mount Nemo is where Moses was buried and where he saw the promised land from. This is an overlook of it. But the promised land is a little bit further over here, and we got a picture. Oh, there we go. This would be a rock somewhat like, was rolled in front of the tomb for Jesus so that nobody could take it. I mean, that's a lot of rock. But this is actually, over in this way, is where the promised land. This is 17 miles from us. And then the Dead Sea is over in here. This is our guide. I was a little irked when we went into Jordan and they sent this guy with us. I thought he was going to keep an eye on us so we couldn't do things or whatever. But actually, because they get so much financial aid, they want to make sure that nothing goes wrong for the tourists. Tourism in Jordan is a $4 billion industry, and we give them $2 billion in financial aid a year. So this gentleman was there to help us, and he became a good friend. In fact, I liked him better than our tour guide and treated him financially better than our tour guide. But and he wasn't supposed to take any money, but we did that kind of quietly. But he's a great guy. He was helping. Adam was the youngest one there, but probably everybody else was 50 or older, and some of them were tired or stumbling, some of the women. And this guy, he was there helping to take care of them. I mean, he was good.
He took the time because I was the youngest person there by at least 2 decades, and no disrespect, but there was also a lady who had slipped and fallen at Masada earlier and banged herself up pretty good. And even though devout Muslims are not supposed to touch women, he was taking the time to aid her because it was aid. and just a very kind, salt of the earth human being.
He's a great guy. He was a great guy. He had 2 children. He was 31, I believe. But nice tourism police. Just a great guy. Again, some more wire, serpentine wire. This is my honey. We're in a zoo. She's monkeying around. Now we're heading back to the port of Jaffa, where we had begun in the outskirts of Tel Aviv. This is where Jonah would have taken off from. Or excuse me, no, that was back in, yeah, it would have been, yeah. And finish. Sally was better. Adam was better. I don't know if Adam had anything, but this was Gilletto. And I had this little picture. It didn't look near this big. But it was great. It was a great way to finish off our trip. And, yeah, I actually almost asked for help.
Don't let him lie. It was ginormous.
Yeah, it was the pictures. You know, the pictures always make everything look bigger. So, but so that concludes our trip, and we were very blessed that 55 years later, after I first wanted to, we had a chance to go there, and God kept us safe. But let's close in a word of prayer, please. Oh, Father in heaven, thank you for each day you give us. Help us to live so that our light shines, so that you can be seen in us, Lord. We can glorify you. Thank you for the opportunities you give us. Thank you for our health. Thank you for all the times you keep us safe and all you do for us. Thank you for your Son standing in our stead, Lord. Amen.